On Christmas Eve, I sat alone at home, even though my children had promised to come home for dinner. Instead, they chose to go to a party. The meal went cold, the house felt empty, and I cried alone in the living room as loneliness enveloped every corner. Late that night, they called me not to apologize, but to ask for money, as if I were a zero-interest loan bank. But they didn't know I'd already bought a one-way ticket. By the time they realized the truth, I was already far away, a place they would never have imagined. No matter where you are, never let yourself be forgotten, as I once was. Where are you watching this journey from? Drop a comment below, and let's spread this message together. The table had been set since dawn. I woke up at 5 that Christmas Eve morning with something I hadn't felt in years, hope, maybe, or just the stubborn need to believe this time would be different. I pulled out Dorothy's good china, the set, with the delicate gold trim she'd only used for special occasions. My hands trembled as I arranged each plate. 72 years and 40 of them working factory floors in Youngstown will do that to you. The turkey went into the oven at 6. Mashed potatoes with extra butter the way Preston liked them. Green bean casserole. Apple pie, his favorite, since he was 7. By 6 that evening, everything was perfect. Candles on Dorothy's white tablecloth. Cloth napkins folded the way she'd taught me. 2 wrapped gifts under the small tree in the corner. Things I'd made with my own hands like every year. I didn't open them. I just looked at them and remembered when my children used to tear through wrapping paper with shrieks of joy. I sat down and waited. 6:30 came and went. Then 7, I called Preston. Voicemail. Called Natasha. Same thing. I told myself they were running late, that any minute they'd walk through that door. By 8 o'clock, the headache started. That pressure behind my eyes that meant trouble. I went to the bathroom, took my blood pressure pill. The doctor said stress makes it worse. Well, sitting alone on Christmas Eve while your children ignore you, that'll do it. The turkey was getting cold, the candles burning low. I stared at those wrapped gifts and let myself remember. Preston at 7, gap-toothed and grinning, showing me the wooden car I'd made him. Natasha at 5 in her Sunday dress because it made her feel fancy like Mama. Dorothy laughing, her hand in mine. Where did those people go? I called again at 8:30. 9 o'clock, nothing. Then at 9:30, my phone rang. Preston. Hello? Hey, Dad, listen. His voice was rushed. Behind him, music, laughter, glasses clinking. A party. I need a huge favor. Can you wire me $5,000? It's urgent. The words hit like cold water. 5,000, Preston, it's Christmas Eve. You said you were coming. Something came up. Just send it to my account, okay, please, Dad. I really need this. But, gotta go. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone until the screen went dark. $5,000. Nearly everything I had left after this month's bills. My Social Security was $1,100 a month. Most of that went to heat and groceries for a table nobody came to. I looked around the empty room. Untouched food. Melting candles. Cold silence. 50 years, I thought. 50 years I gave them everything. I worked doubles so Preston could have soccer cleats. Skipped meals so Natasha could take piano lessons she quit after 2 months. Drove a car with 200,000 miles so they could have what their friends had. And tonight, they couldn't even show up. But they needed money. The candles guttered out one by one. I sat in the growing darkness and felt something inside me that had been bending for decades finally start to break, not with a snap. Just a slow, quiet crack, like ice on a river in early spring. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. I was still sitting in the dark living room, staring at nothing in particular, when the screen lit up. A text message. Not Preston calling back to apologize. Not Natasha finally responding to my calls. Sophia, my granddaughter, 8 years old, Natasha's daughter, the only person in my family who still seemed to remember I had a name. Hi, Grandpa. Merry Christmas. Something shifted in my chest. I typed back with clumsy fingers. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. The reply came immediately, like she'd been waiting. I'm so sorry we couldn't come tonight. I really wanted to see you. I stared at those words. She wanted to see me, not because she needed something, just because. Mom and Dad said they had other plans. I cried because I miss you so much. Other plans? That's what they told her. Not the truth that they'd chosen champagne and whatever party they were at over spending one evening with their father, that they hadn't even had the decency to bring their daughter to see her grandfather on Christmas. I wanted to spend Christmas with you. I love when we're together. My hands were shaking. Not from the arthritis this time. Are you all alone tonight, Grandpa? That makes me really sad. I wiped my eyes before I even realized I was crying. I didn't want to lie to her, but I didn't want her carrying this weight either. I'm okay, honey. How was your evening? A pause. Then I drew you a picture at school. It's of us at the beach building sandcastles together. The beach. I looked at the Christmas tree, at the gifts nobody had opened, at the cold turkey on the counter. In 72 years, I'd never seen the ocean. Never had the time. Never had the money. Never had anyone who wanted to go with me. But Sophia had drawn us there. Together. That sounds beautiful, sweetheart. I can't wait to see it. Do you think we could go to the beach together someday? I've never been to the ocean. I sat back in my chair. Something was shifting inside me. This wasn't just about me anymore. This wasn't just about being forgotten and taken for granted. This was about showing this little girl that someone in her family kept their promises. That love meant more than words on a screen. That she mattered. Yes, baby girl, one day we will. I promise. I meant it. God help me. I meant it. I have to go now. Mom's calling me. I love you, Grandpa. I hope you had a good Christmas, even without us there. I love you too, Sophia. So much. The screen went dark. The house fell silent again. But this time the silence felt different. It didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. I scrolled back up to Preston's text from an hour ago. That casual demand for $5,000. No apology. No explanation. Just, I really need this. Then I scrolled back down to Sophia's messages. I cried because I miss you so much. The contrast hit me like a punch to the chest. My granddaughter had cried because she wanted to see me. My son had called because he wanted my money. One of them loved me. The other one needed me. And after 50 years, I was finally starting to understand the difference. I set the phone down on the table and looked around the empty room one more time. The candles had burned out completely now. The food was cold. The gifts sat unopened under the tree. But somewhere in this city, an 8-year-old girl had drawn a picture of us building sandcastles by the ocean, and she'd never even seen the ocean. I stood up slowly. My knees cracked. My back ached. But my mind was clearer than it had been in years. Soon, sweetheart, I whispered to the empty room, we'll build those castles. I never did fall asleep that night. Around 5 in the morning, I gave up trying. The house was dark except for the blue glow of my laptop as I opened it at the kitchen table. I wasn't much for computers, never had been, but sometimes you need to see the truth with your own eyes. I found Preston's Instagram first. The posts from last night were right there. Not one. A whole evening documented while I'd been sitting alone. 7:30 p.m. Pre-dinner cocktails at some downtown venue with chandeliers. Champagne glass raised. Starting the night right. 8:47 p.m. Best Christmas Eve ever. A table full of strangers laughing, toasting. Expensive food. Bottle service. 11:15 p.m. After party at a penthouse bar. City lights behind them. I clicked on the location tags. The restaurant's Prax Fix menu $300 per person. The bar had a minimum spend of $150. Factory worker math. He'd spent over $1,000 last night. The comments underneath said it all. You guys went all out. Worth every penny. I switched to Facebook. Natasha's page. An entire album. Christmas Eve 2024. 47 photos. Designer dress with a visible label. $400 easy. Professional makeup. Hair done. She looked beautiful. She looked happy. She looked like someone who had no idea her father was sitting alone. Living our best life. More cocktails. More champagne. A dessert tower that probably cost what I spent on groceries in a month. I checked the timestamps. Preston's 9:30 call, the one asking for $5,000, had come right in the middle of dinner service. There was no emergency. No urgent situation. Just a bill he couldn't pay because he'd already spent more than he had. They'd chosen this. These people I'd never met. This life I wasn't part of. And then he'd called me to fund it. Sophia's message echoed in my head. Mom and Dad said they had other plans. Other plans? $1,000 party instead of bringing their daughter to see her grandfather. I closed the laptop. Sat in the darkness. Not sadness anymore. Something colder. Clearer. I walked to my bedroom, opened the nightstand drawer. My checkbook was there, old-fashioned, the kind nobody uses anymore. I sat on the edge of my bed and wrote it out. Pay to the order of Preston Coleman. Amount 5,000 Ars. I looked at it for a long time. Thought about Sophia crying because she missed me. Thought about 50 years of giving everything. Thought about cold turkey and phone calls that only came when they needed money. Then I tore the check in half. Then in half again. And again. No, I said out loud. Not one more time. The pieces fell like snow into the trash can. For the first time in decades, saying no felt like breathing. 3 hours later, the phone rang again. I was still at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold in my hands. Gray morning light filtered through the curtains. The leftover food sat on the counter where I'd left it, congealing, ruined. The house felt different than it had on other Christmas mornings. Heavier, like the walls themselves knew something had shifted. I looked at the screen. Preston. My hand hesitated over the phone. Then I answered. Hello, Dad. His voice had that edge to it. Irritation mixed with exhaustion. Did you send the money? I've been checking my account all morning. I took a breath. No, Preston. I didn't send it. Silence. Then what? Why not? I told you it was urgent. I saw your Instagram posts. My voice was steadier than I expected. The party at Henderson's looked expensive. Another pause. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. Defensive. That's different. That party was planned weeks ago. This is about something else. What exactly do you need $5,000 for? Just bills. Stuff piled up. He was avoiding the question. Look, can we not do this right now? Just send the money. I stared at the phone, at my reflection in the black screen of the laptop still sitting on the table, at the pieces of torn check in the trash can beside me. You needed your father on Christmas Eve, I said quietly, but a party was more important. Don't be dramatic. His voice turned cold. It's just one dinner. We'll come next time. Just send the money. Okay. Next time. There was always a next time. Next Christmas. Next birthday. Next time they needed something from me. But there was never a next time for the things I needed from them. No, Preston. The word came out firm. Final. I'm not sending it. Seriously? I could hear the anger building. After everything But I didn't hear the rest. I hung up. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down. My heart was pounding. The blood pressure medication I'd taken an hour ago wasn't doing much good. But underneath the physical reaction, underneath the adrenaline, and the fear of confrontation I'd spent a lifetime avoiding, there was something else. Clarity. I looked around the empty house, at Dorothy's china still on the table, at the wrapped gifts still under the tree, at the life I'd built that had somehow become a prison of my own making. 50 years of saying yes, of giving everything, of believing that if I just loved them enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, they'd finally see me as more than a wallet with a heartbeat. But Sophia's words kept echoing in my head. I cried because I miss you. She missed me, not my money, me. And Preston only called when he needed something. I stood up, my knees cracked, my back ached, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. I can't live like this anymore, I said out loud to the empty kitchen. I can't. The words hung in the air. True. Undeniable. I picked up my phone again, scrolled through my contacts, found the name I was looking for. Vernon Davis, my friend from the factory. The only person left in Youngstown who still called just to check on me. He answered on the second ring. Merry Christmas, Herb. Vernon, my voice cracked. Can you come over? I need to talk to someone. There was no hesitation. Give me 20 minutes. He hung up. I set the phone down. 20 minutes. Then I'd tell someone the truth about what I was thinking, about what I needed to do, about leaving. Vernon arrived an hour later. I heard his truck pull into the driveway, that familiar rattle of an engine he'd been nursing along for 15 years. He didn't knock. Just opened the door and walked in the way old friends do when they know something's wrong. Herb, he said, and stopped. He saw it all immediately. The untouched feast still sitting on the counter, now a full day old. The table set for guests who never came. The wrapped gifts under the tree. The house that looked exactly like what it was, a stage abandoned by its actors. What happened? I told him everything. Christmas Eve alone. Preston calling from a party asking for $5,000. Sophia's texts about crying because she missed me. The Instagram posts I'd found at dawn, the champagne the designer dresses the $1,000 celebration. Preston's angry call this morning demanding to know why I hadn't sent money. I showed Vernon the screenshots. He scrolled through them slowly, his jaw tightening. They asked you for $5,000. His voice was tight with anger. While you sat here alone and they were at a party, I nodded. I tore up the check. First time in 30 years, I've said no. Good. Vernon set my phone down. You should have said no years ago. I looked at my hands. 72 years old and still shaking like a kid who'd talked back. Vernon, I can't stay here anymore. I need to leave. Go somewhere far away. He studied my face. Where would you go? I don't know. The words came out raw. Somewhere I can breathe. Somewhere by the ocean like Sophia drew. Somewhere I'm not just a wallet they remember when bills come due. Vernon was quiet. Then he leaned back and nodded slowly. You're not running away, Herb. You're running toward yourself. The words hit me like a door opening onto fresh air. Running toward myself. After 50 years of running toward everyone else's needs, we sat in silence, not the heavy, suffocating kind, the silence of understanding, of a friend who knew exactly who you were underneath the exhaustion. You'll need to get things in order, Vernon said finally. Lawyer, paperwork, the house. I know a lawyer, Patrick Donovan. He helped a friend of mine with estate planning. Call him, Vernon said. I'll help you with the rest. The rest felt enormous. 50 years of accumulated life, a house full of memories, legal documents, the practical machinery of leaving. When do you want to go? Vernon asked. I thought about Sophia's picture of sandcastles, about Preston's cold voice, about waking up every morning in this empty house. Soon, I said. As soon as possible. Maybe mid-January. 3 weeks. That's all the time I'd give myself to close the book on Youngstown, Ohio. I'll be here, Vernon said. Whatever you need. Packing driving paperwork. I'm here. He stood up, put his hand on my shoulder. Not the kind of weight that holds you down, but the kind that keeps you steady. For the first time in 30 years, someone was supporting my decision, not questioning it, not trying to talk me out of it, not telling me I was being selfish, just supporting me. After Vernon left, I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. Monday morning, I'd call Patrick Donovan, and then I'd start building the bridge that would carry me away from here, towards something I couldn't name yet but could finally see in the distance. Freedom. Patrick Donovan's office was on the second floor of a brick building downtown. Small but professional. Diplomas on the wall. Law books on shelves. A desk that had seen better days but was clean. Patrick was younger than I expected. 39, maybe 40. Sharp suit. Kind eyes. He shook my hand and gestured to a chair. Mr. Coleman, Vernon said you needed help with estate planning. I need to change my will, I said, and make sure everything's in order before I leave town. He pulled out a legal pad. Tell me what's going on. I gave him the short version, 50 years of giving everything to my family. Dorothy dying 8 years ago. My children drifting away until I became someone they only remembered when they needed something. Christmas Eve alone while they partied. Preston calling to ask for $5,000. Sophia texting to say she'd cried because she missed me. The decision to leave, to start over. Patrick listened without interrupting. When I finished, he set down his pen. What do you want to do, Mr. Coleman? Change my will. Protect what I have left. What does your current will say? 50% to my son Preston, 50% to my daughter Natasha. Patrick made a note. And now, I'd thought about this for 3 days. 30% to Vernon Davis. He's been more family than my own blood. 50% to the Veterans Charity Organization. 20% split between Preston and Natasha. 10% each. Patrick looked up. That's a significant reduction. They'll still get something, but they don't deserve what I was going to give them. And the rest of your estate. Maybe $15,000 in savings after I sell the house. I want to set up a trust for Sophia. $15,000. She can't touch it until she's 18. Her mother can't touch it either. Patrick's pen moved across the page. That's very specific. Sophia's the only one who loves me for me. She deserves to know I thought about her future. Patrick finished writing. This is legally sound, Mr. Coleman. But I have to ask, are you certain these changes can create family conflict? I thought about Preston's cold voice, about Natasha's 47 photos of a party I wasn't invited to, about Sophia's message, "I cried because I miss you." I've never been more certain about anything in my life. We spent the next hour on paperwork, signatures, witnesses, his secretary and a paralegal, notarization, official stamps, the machinery of making sure my wishes would be honored. Patrick handed me a copy in a manila envelope. "If you're leaving, make sure everything else is in order too. Bank accounts, property, make it clean." "I will." I stood up, shook his hand. "Thank you." I walked down the stairs into the cold January afternoon. The envelope felt light in my hands. Just paper. But it represented something heavier. Control. Dignity. The right to decide who deserved what I'd built. They'd know eventually. When I was gone, or maybe before, they'd learn their inheritance had shrunk to 10% each, that Vernon Davis would get more than they would, that Sophia's trust was locked away from them, and maybe then they'd understand what they'd lost. Not money. Me. The sorting began on January 3rd and took 5 days. 50 years of accumulated life doesn't fit in a suitcase. You have to choose. What matters? What doesn't? What you can't live without, and what you've been carrying out of habit. I made 3 piles. Take, give away, throw out. Evelyn Richards from down the street came for the dining room table, the same table where I'd waited on Christmas Eve. "Herbert, are you sure?" "I'm sure. It deserves to be used." She didn't ask why. Maybe she understood. The old factory tools went to a garage sale. Young guys showed up excited about wrenches that had been sitting in my basement for years. $12 for the lot. I didn't care about the money. Dorothy's clothes were the hardest. 8 years I'd kept them hanging in the closet. Her Sunday dress, her winter coat, the sweater from our last Christmas. I folded them into boxes and drove them to the Goodwill on Market Street. The woman at the donation desk smiled. Someone will be grateful. I hoped so. What I kept fit in one corner. A few changes of clothes, important documents, photos of Dorothy, our wedding picture, her laughing in the kitchen flower on her nose, and the guitar. Vernon found it on the 4th day, shoved behind paint cans in the basement, a dusty case covered in cobwebs. "What's this guitar, from before?" Vernon pulled it into the light. "Didn't know you played. Long time ago, before everything else took over." "You bringing it?" I looked at it, at the man I used to be before the factory consumed everything, before Dorothy got sick, before I forgot there were parts of me that weren't about providing, fixing, giving. "Yeah, I'll bring it." But I didn't open the case, didn't check the strings, just set it by the front door with the other things I was taking. In the evenings I wrote letters. To Preston, "You asked me for $5,000 on Christmas Eve. I didn't send it because I'd already given you 50 years of my life. That's enough." "Dad," to Natasha, "you have a wonderful daughter. She loves family. Show her you can be a better mother than you've been a daughter." "Dad," to Sophia, "Sweetheart, I'm going to keep my promise to you. I'll be somewhere beautiful. Someday you'll understand. I love you so much. Grandpa?" I wrapped the old gifts I'd made over the years, picture frames, jewelry boxes, wooden toys they'd never opened, and packed them with the letters. Sealed everything up. Set them aside, not ready to send them yet, but ready to say what needed to be said. By January 7th, the house was nearly empty. Boxes by the door, furniture gone. Walls bare except for rectangles of unfaded paint, where pictures used to hang. Each thing that left made me lighter. Not sad, just lighter. Like I'd been carrying weight I didn't need anymore. The guitar case stood by the door, a relic from a life I used to live, a promise of something I might become again. Maybe it wasn't too late to remember who I was before I became everyone's answer to everything. Maybe it wasn't too late to find out. Gerald Hopkins called on the morning of January 8th. I'd listed the house quietly the week before. Private sale. No signs in the yard. Nothing Preston or Natasha would notice driving by, not that they drove by anymore. "Mr. Coleman, I have excellent news. Cash offer. $115,000. Buyer wants to close within a week." I didn't hesitate. "I'll take it." "Don't you want to negotiate counteroffer?" "No. I want it done quickly. Can we close by the 14th? I'll make it happen." We set the signing for January 10th. I hung up and sat at the empty kitchen table, looking around at the bare walls. 42 years in this house. I'd carried Dorothy over the threshold when we bought it in 1983, brought Preston home from the hospital, then Natasha 2 years later. Watched them grow up in these rooms. Had birthdays and Christmases and ordinary Tuesdays that felt like everything at the time. Now it was just walls. Empty walls that had witnessed me shrink from a man into a checkbook. My phone rang again that afternoon. Natasha. I almost didn't answer. Hey, Dad, how was your Christmas? The casual tone, like we'd just talked yesterday, like nothing had happened. I spent it alone, I said flatly. Awkward pause. Forced laugh. Oh, sorry things got crazy. Listen, can you help me out? I need about $300 for Sophia's school supplies. Something sharp twisted in my chest. I don't have it, Natasha. Come on, Dad. It's for Sophia. If it's for Sophia, I said slowly, you should have brought her to see me on Christmas. Silence. Then her voice changed. Defensive. That's not fair. Goodbye, Natasha. I hung up, turned off the phone, sat in the silence of the house that wouldn't be mine much longer. That was the last conversation I had with my daughter before I left. January 10th arrived cold and gray. I met Gerald and the buyers at the title company. Young couple, 2 kids. They looked at me with excitement in their eyes, the way Dorothy and I must have looked 42 years ago. Thank you so much, Mr. Coleman. We love the house. Take good care of it, I said. It's a good house. Deserves a family that'll appreciate it. I signed papers for an hour. Initials here. Signature there. The mechanical process of transferring a life to strangers. When it was done, Gerald handed me a check. $115,000. More money than I'd seen in one place in my entire life. Where should we send the wire? Gerald asked. I gave him the routing number for the new account I'd opened 3 days earlier. The one Preston and Natasha didn't know about. The one that would fund whatever came next. The house would officially transfer on January 14th. 4 days from now. 4 days until it belonged to people who'd make new memories in the rooms where mine had turned bitter. That evening, Vernon came by. We sat on the floor of the empty living room eating pizza from a box. No furniture, no plates. Just 2 old factory workers sitting on hardwood surrounded by echoes. You ready? Vernon asked. I looked around the bare room, at the rectangles on the walls where pictures used to hang. At the front door I'd walk out of for the last time in 4 days. More ready than I've ever been. Vernon nodded, took another bite of pizza. 5 days until you're free. 5 days. 120 hours. And then Herbert Coleman, 72 years old factory worker, grandfather would step onto a bus and become someone new. Someone who chose himself. Finally. The afternoon I signed away the house. I sat in the empty living room with my laptop and bought the ticket. Greyhound, Youngstown to Brunswick, Georgia. Departure, January 15th, 8:30 a.m. One way, $85. I stared at the confirmation email for a long time. The black text on the white screen. Proof that this wasn't just an idea anymore. This was real. This was happening. Destination Brunswick, Georgia. I'd never been to Georgia, never been south of Pittsburgh, but I'd looked it up. Small coastal town, population 20,000, right on the Atlantic Ocean. The kind of place where you could disappear and nobody would ask questions. The kind of place where Sophia's sandcastles could be real. January 11th, I went to the bank. Transferred the $115,000 from the house sale into the new account. Withdrew $6,000 in cash. Hundreds and fifties divided into envelopes and tucked into different pockets. Emergency money, starting over money, freedom money. Then I closed the old account, the one I'd had for 40 years, the one Preston and Natasha knew about. Left $50 in it as a courtesy before they shut it down. $50. That's what 40 years of loyalty to First National Bank of Youngstown was worth. January 12th, I walked to the post office on Market Street. 3 manila envelopes. Preston's name on one. Natasha's on another. Sophia's on the third. Each one contained a letter and a wrapped gift things I'd made years ago that they'd never opened. No return address, just my name in the corner. The postal worker weighed them. 3-day delivery. Should arrive by the 17th. 2 days after I'd be gone. Perfect. That afternoon, Evelyn Richards came by to pick up the dining room table. She brought her son to help load it into his truck. She hugged me in the empty kitchen. "Where are you going, Herbert?" "Somewhere I can breathe," I said. "Somewhere by the ocean." She pulled back and looked at me with eyes that had seen their own share of loss. "You deserve happiness. Go find it." "I'm trying," I said, and I meant it. January 13th. Vernon came over to check on me. I was down to one suitcase and the guitar case. That's it. 50 years reduced to 2 bags. "That's all you're taking?" He looked around the bare room. 50 years was too much weight to carry anyway. We went over the plan one more time. Bus leaves at 8:30. He'd pick me up at 7:15. Get there early. No room for mistakes or second thoughts. "You scared?" Vernon asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "But the good kind. The kind that means you're doing something that matters." He gripped my shoulder. "See you tomorrow morning?" January 14th. I handed the keys to the new owners. Young couple. 2 kids under 5. They walked through the empty rooms with wonder in their eyes, making plans for paint colors and furniture placement, the same way Dorothy and I had 42 years ago. "Thank you again," the husband said. "This is our first house." "Make good memories here," I told them. "It's a good house. Just needed a fresh start." Like me. Vernon picked me up that afternoon. I'd spend the night at his place. One last night in Youngstown. One last night as the man I'd been for 72 years. I lay awake in Vernon's guest room, staring at the ceiling. The suitcase and guitar case sat by the door, packed and ready. My phone was off. My old life was boxed up or given away or reduced to ashes. Tomorrow morning I'd get on a bus. Tomorrow morning Herbert Coleman, factory worker, father forgotten man, would disappear. And someone new would step off in Brunswick, Georgia. Someone who'd chosen himself for the first time in 50 years. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, just to picture it. The ocean, the waves, the salt air, the feeling of being somewhere nobody expected anything from me except to exist. Tomorrow I'd be free. Vernon's truck pulled up at 7:15 on the morning of January 15th. The sky was still dark, cold, fog thick enough that I could barely see across the street. Youngstown in winter, gray and unforgiving, the kind of cold that gets into your bones and stays there. We didn't talk much on the drive to the bus station, just the quiet presence of 2 men who'd worked side by side for 20 years and didn't need words to understand each other. The Greyhound station was nearly empty. A few people waiting with tired eyes and worn luggage. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Everything smelled like old coffee and diesel fuel. Vernon pulled my suitcase from the truck bed. I held the guitar case close. We stood there in the cold parking lot, breath visible in the air between us. "You got everything?" Vernon asked. "Money, documents, phone." I patted my jacket pocket. "All here. Call me when you get there. Let me know you're safe." "I will." My voice caught. "Vernon, thank you. For everything." His eyes were wet. He blinked it away. "You're doing the right thing, Herb. Remember that when it gets hard." We hugged, the kind of hug that says everything words can't. Then he stepped back, nodded once, and walked to his truck. He didn't drive away, just stood there beside it, hands in his pockets, watching. At 8:15, the bus pulled in. Big silver Greyhound with Atlanta, Savannah, Brunswick lit up on the destination board above the windshield. My heart hammered. This was it. No more planning, no more thinking. Just doing. I climbed aboard, found a window seat halfway back, hoisted my suitcase into the overhead rack, set the guitar in the seat beside me like a passenger. Through the window I could see Vernon still standing there. He raised one hand. I raised mine back. At 8:30 the engine roared. The bus lurched forward. I watched Youngstown slide past the window. The factories, the neighborhoods, the streets I'd driven for 50 years. All of it shrinking, fading, disappearing into the fog behind us. I didn't look back, just kept my eyes forward, toward whatever came next. The hours rolled by like the highway beneath us. Pittsburgh at 10:30. Quick stop, bathroom break. I bought a sandwich I didn't eat and called Vernon from a payphone. "I'm okay. Pennsylvania now." "Good, keep going." The landscape changed as we moved south. Industrial Rust Belt gave way to rolling hills. Then farms, then forests so green they looked like something from a postcard. Virginia, North Carolina. The air warming with every mile. I thought about Dorothy, about what she'd say if she could see me now, running away at 72, leaving everything behind. But maybe she'd understand. Maybe she'd been trapped too in her own way, by duty, by expectation, by the belief that love meant sacrificing yourself until there was nothing left. You'd understand, wouldn't you? I whispered to her memory. I thought about Sophia, about her drawing of sandcastles, about the promise I'd made. Almost there, sweetheart. We're almost there. Around 5 in the afternoon, I saw the sign. Big green highway marker, Welcome to Georgia. I smiled. First time I'd smiled in 10 hours. The bus kept rolling, through small towns with names I'd never heard, through pine forests, past signs for Savannah, then smaller signs. Brunswick, 45 miles. Brunswick, 20 miles. Brunswick, next exit. At 6:30 p.m., the bus pulled into Brunswick Station. Small building, quiet. Nothing like the Youngstown terminal. I grabbed my suitcase, picked up the guitar, stepped down onto Georgia pavement. The air hit me first, warm, humid, smelling of salt and something green and alive. Nothing like the metallic cold of Ohio. I looked around. Palm trees lined the street, yellow streetlights glowing in the dusk, people speaking in slow southern drawls. Everything different, everything new. I stood there on the curb with my 2 bags and breathed. 10 hours, 600 miles, a lifetime of distance. I made it, I said out loud. I actually made it. And for the first time since Christmas Eve, the weight that had been pressing on my chest lifted. Not gone, but lighter. Light enough to breathe. Light enough to start again. A taxi was waiting outside the Brunswick station. The driver was older, friendly, with that slow southern accent. He loaded my suitcase. I kept the guitar with me. Hopkins Inn, right? Yes, I said. First time in Brunswick. First time anywhere like this. He smiled in the rearview mirror. You picked a good place. We drove through downtown. Small, quiet, palm trees and little restaurants with lights in the windows. Nothing like Youngstown's rusted factories. People walked slowly like they had nowhere urgent to be. 15 minutes later, we pulled up to Hopkins Inn. Small motel right on the coast. White paint. A sign that said vacancy in blue letters. Gerald Hopkins Jr. was at the front desk, maybe 40. Friendly smile. Mr. Coleman. We've been expecting you. Welcome to Brunswick. Check-in took 5 minutes. He handed me an actual metal key for room 7. Ocean view, best room in the house. I found my way down the hallway. Room 7 at the end. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Small room. Queen bed, desk, bathroom. Nothing fancy. But there was a window. A big window taking up most of the far wall. I set down my suitcase, put the guitar on the bed, walked to that window. My hands shook as I pulled the curtains back, and there it was, the Atlantic Ocean. 72 years and I'd never seen it. Never had the time, never had the money, never had anyone who wanted to go. But now it was right there, endless and dark and moving like something alive. The sun had just set, purple and pink sky. Waves rolling in steady and rhythmic, moonlight starting to glitter on the water. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Tears came, not sad tears, just release. 50 years of pressure breaking. I made it, Sophia, I whispered. Grandpa made it to the ocean. I opened the window. Salt air rushed in, warm and clean. The waves got louder, more real, like a heartbeat I'd been missing my whole life. I turned back to the bed, pulled out the guitar case, set it down. First time I'd actually opened it since finding it 2 weeks ago. The latches clicked. The case creaked open. There it was, my old acoustic, dusty, strings dull, but whole. I lifted it out, sat on the bed, positioned it in my lap the way I used to 40 years ago. My fingers found the strings, stiff, unpracticed. But muscle memory lives in your bones longer than you think. I tried a few chords. C, G, am, F, rusty, out of tune. But it was music, real music. And mixed with the sound of waves through the window, it was perfect. I played for maybe 10 minutes, just chords, just reminding my hands what they used to know. When I stopped, my fingers ached. But it was a good ache, the kind that means you're waking up muscles that had gone to sleep. I set the guitar back, changed into pajamas, lay down with the window still open, the ocean still singing. For the first time in 8 years since Dorothy died, I fell asleep without pills. No lying awake for hours, just waves and salt air and the knowledge that I'd done it. I'd left, I'd traveled 600 miles, I'd kept my promise to Sophia, I'd found the ocean. This is home, I whispered into the dark. Finally, this is home. January 17th, 2 days since I arrived in Brunswick. I woke up that morning knowing what day it was. The letters would arrive today. I'd timed it, carefully mailed them on the 12th 5-day delivery. Today, Preston and Natasha would open their mailboxes and find my words waiting for them. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, hands folded, staring at the floor. My phone was on the nightstand. Silent. I'd kept it on just in case. Part of me, some old stubborn part, wondered if they'd call. Would Preston call to yell at me? Would Natasha cry and demand to know where I was? Would Sophia ask her mother why Grandpa wasn't home anymore? I stood up and walked to the window. The ocean stretched out endlessly gray-blue under the morning clouds. Waves rolled in steady and unbothered. I'd spent the last 2 days just watching them, listening to them, letting them wash over the noise in my head. But today the noise was back. I kept imagining it, Preston tearing open the envelope, pulling out the handmade picture frame I'd built him when he was 12 back, when he still thought I hung the moon. Reading my words. You asked for $5,000 on Christmas Eve. I didn't send it because I'd already given you 50 years of my life. That's enough. Would he understand? Would he even care? And Natasha? I'd sent her the jewelry box Dorothy had loved, the one I'd made for her 30 years ago. My letter to her was shorter, harder. You have a wonderful daughter. She loves family. Show her you can be a better mother than you've been a daughter. That one hurt to write. But it was true. Then there was Sophia. Her letter was different, gentler. I'd told her I was somewhere beautiful, that I'd keep my promise, that I loved her. I didn't want her to think I'd abandoned her. I just needed her to know that sometimes grown-ups have to choose themselves. I hoped she'd understand someday. By 10 o'clock, I couldn't sit still anymore. I grabbed my jacket and walked outside. The air smelled like salt and wet sand. I walked down to the beach, shoes sinking into the soft ground. There were a few people out, early joggers, a man with his dog, a couple holding hands. I stood at the water's edge and watched the waves come in, over and over, endless, unbothered. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out, heart pounding. A text from Vernon. They got the letters. Preston called the lawyer. Natasha called me. Both of them angry, confused. I didn't tell them anything. You good? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back. I'm good. Thank you, Vernon, he replied immediately. You did the right thing, Herb. Don't forget that. I put the phone back in my pocket. They knew now. They knew I was gone. They knew I'd sold the house. They knew I wasn't coming back to the life I'd lived for 50 years. And standing there with the ocean in front of me and 600 miles between me and Youngstown, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace, not relief, not victory, just peace. I thought about Sophia again, her drawing of the two of us building sandcastles, her little voice asking, "Do you think we could go to the beach together someday?" "We will, sweetheart," I whispered to the wind. "Someday we will." I turned and walked back toward the motel. The sun was breaking through the clouds, now casting long golden streaks across the water. My guitar was waiting for me in the room. I'd play a little today, maybe walk into town, maybe just sit and breathe. For the first time in decades, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I didn't owe anyone anything. I was free. The first week in Brunswick, I learned what mornings were supposed to feel like. I woke at 6 every day, not because an alarm dragged me awake, but because the light came through the window, soft and warm, and I wanted to see it. I'd pull on my shoes and walk down to the beach while the world was still quiet. Just me, the sand, and the waves rolling in like they'd been doing it forever. I'd never done this before. Walked just to walk, stood just to stand. Felt the sand under my bare feet, and let the ocean sound fill up all the empty places inside me. On the third morning, January 18th, I wasn't alone. "You're the new guy." I turned. An older man, maybe 78, with a weathered face and a friendly smile, stood a few feet away. He wore a faded Duke University cap and carried a thermos. I said. "Just got here a few days ago." "Figured. I walk this stretch every morning. Name's Chester Morgan. He stuck out his hand. Herbert Coleman. I shook it. Chester studied me for a moment. So which is it, running from something or running toward something? I smiled despite myself. I think it's both. He nodded like that made perfect sense. Best reason to move there is, I'm 2 streets that way if you ever need anything. Coffee's always on. From then on, we walked together most mornings. Didn't talk much. Didn't need to. Just 2 old men who understood that sometimes silence was the best conversation. In the afternoons, I sat on the porch outside my room and played my guitar. My fingers were stiff at first, 40 years of not playing. We'll do that. But slowly, day by day, they remembered. Chord shapes came back. Melodies I thought I'd forgotten started to surface. I played Blackbird. Wish You Were Here. Landslide. Not well, not like I used to, but enough to feel like I was waking up from a very long sleep. On the 5th day, January 20th, Gerald Jr. came out of the motel office while I was playing. You're really good, he said, leaning against the railing. You ever think about performing? I laughed. Not since 1992. There's a coffee shop downtown called Coastal Brews. They do open mic every Friday night. Local folks, tourists, whoever wants to play. You should go. I shook my head. I'm 72 years old and very out of practice. Gerald grinned. Sounds like the perfect time to start again. Evenings were quiet. I cooked simple meals, learned how to make just enough for one. Read books I'd been meaning to read for years. Listened to the waves through the open window. And every night I called Vernon. How you holding up, Herb? I'm good, Vernon. Really good. For the first time in years, I feel light. There was a pause. Then Preston and Natasha are looking for you. They've called me about 12 times. Let them look, I said quietly. I'm not ready to talk yet. You don't have to be ready. You don't owe them a damn thing. I hung up and sat in the dark for a while, listening to the ocean. Thinking about Sophia. About Dorothy. About the life I'd left behind, and the one I was building here one quiet day at a time. On the evening of January 22nd, I sat on the beach, at sunset guitar resting across my lap. I didn't play. Just sat there, feeling the cool sand, the warm air, the rhythm of the waves. Chester walked by on his way home. You coming to open mic this Friday? He called out. I looked down at the guitar, thought about Gerald's words, thought about all the years I'd spent doing what everyone else needed instead of what I wanted. Maybe, I said, maybe I will. Chester smiled. Good, I'll save you a seat. He walked on, and I stayed there, watching the sun sink into the ocean, painting the sky, gold and pink and purple. For the first time in 50 years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready for it. Friday night, January 24th. I stood outside Coastal Brews with my guitar case, trying to remember how to breathe. Chester pulled up in his old Ford truck. You ready? No, I said honestly. He grinned. Perfect. Let's go. The coffee shop was small and warm. Maybe 30 seats, a tiny stage in the corner, string lights hanging from the ceiling, and the rich smell of fresh roasted coffee everywhere. Most of the crowd was young college kids, artists, locals in their 20s and 30s. I sat in the back corner, guitar case at my feet, and watched. A girl in her early 20s sang an indie song I didn't recognize. A young man read poetry about the ocean. A duo played folk music on matching guitars. They were all so talented, so confident. I started to think coming here was a mistake. Then the owner, a woman in her mid-30s with tattoos down both arms and a warm smile, walked over. You planning to play tonight? She asked, nodding at my guitar. Oh, I don't know, just watching. She smiled. That guitar didn't come here just to watch. I'm Amber, by the way, and you should get up there. Chester nudged my shoulder. Come on, Herb. What's the worst that could happen? I looked at him, at Amber, at the stage, and I stood up. My hands were shaking as I climbed onto the small platform. The lights were warm. The microphone stood in front of me like it had been waiting 42 years for this moment. I cleared my throat. Hi, I'm Herbert. I'm 72 years old, and I haven't done this since 1992. A few people laughed, not meanly but kindly. Someone clapped. I adjusted the guitar strap. This song is for my wife, Dorothy. She's been gone 8 years now. And for my granddaughter, Sophia, who reminded me what love looks like. I took a breath and started playing Blackbird. My voice cracked on the first line. My fingers stumbled on the second chord, but I kept going. And somewhere in the middle of the song, something shifted. The room went quiet. People stopped checking their phones. They just listened. I sang the last line softly. You were only waiting for this moment to be free. The guitar rang out. Silence. Then applause. Warm and loud and real. A few people even stood up. I stepped off the stage, blinking back tears. A young woman, maybe 25, came up to me. That was beautiful. How long have you been playing? 50 years, I said. But I just started again. She smiled. Don't stop. Okay. Chester clapped me on the back. Told you, old man. You've still got it. Amber walked over with a cup of coffee. Herbert, you're welcome here any time. Come back next week. I nodded, not trusting my voice. We left around 10, walking back toward the motel under the streetlights. The air was cool and soft. I carried my guitar in one hand, feeling lighter than I had in decades. How do you feel? Chester asked. I looked up at the stars. I feel alive, Chester. I really do. He smiled. Good. That's how you're supposed to feel. When I got back to my room, I set the guitar down carefully and stood by the window. The ocean was dark and endless, the waves glowing faintly under the moon. I thought about Dorothy, about the way she used to listen to me play back when we were young and the world felt full of possibility. Do you see this dot? I thought. I found it again. I found myself. And for the first time in 8 years, I felt her smiling back. February came quietly, then March, then April. The weeks blurred together in the best possible way, not because they were forgettable, but because they were steady, peaceful, mine. I built a routine. Mornings with Chester walking the shoreline while the sun climbed over the water. Afternoons on the porch practicing guitar until my fingers ached in that good, familiar way. Friday nights at Coastal Brews where I'd become a regular the guitar guy, people called me. I didn't mind. By February, people knew my name. Strangers waved. The barista at the coffee cart knew I took my coffee black. A couple of regulars at open mics started inviting me to sit with them, share stories, talk about music or nothing at all. One afternoon, my phone rang. Evelyn Richards, my old neighbor from Youngstown. Herbert Vernon told me you're doing well. I smiled. Better than well, Evelyn. I'm really living. She paused. I'm glad. You deserve it. In March, I sent Sophia a postcard. No return address, just a picture of Brunswick's beach at sunrise. On the back I wrote, Sweetheart, I made it to the ocean. Love, Grandpa. I didn't know if she'd get it. Didn't know if Natasha would let her see it. But I had to try. Later, Vernon told me Sophia cried when she opened it. She carried that postcard everywhere, showed it to her teachers, taped it to her bedroom wall. And Natasha. Natasha looked at it for a long time, Vernon said, and realized something. I'd kept my promise. Just not to her. April brought change. I found a small cottage for rent, 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a porch that faced the water. $850 a month. I could afford it. More than that, I wanted it. I moved in on a Saturday. Chester helped me carry in my few belongings, a suitcase of clothes, my guitar, a box of books, the framed photo of Dorothy. I set her picture on the nightstand, hung the guitar on the wall, arranged the books on a shelf, put a rocking chair on the porch. It was the smallest place I'd ever lived, and it felt like home. That first week I invited people over Chester Gerald Jr. Amber. I cooked grilled fish, made a salad, squeezed fresh lemonade. We sat on the porch and ate and laughed and told stories late into the night. At one point I looked around the table and realized, this is family, not the kind you're born into, the kind you choose. May arrived warm and bright. One afternoon, Chester and I sat on the beach in comfortable silence watching the waves. You happy here, Herb? I thought about it. Happier than I ever thought I could be. No regrets about leaving, I shook my head, only that I didn't do it sooner. He nodded, and we didn't say anything else. We didn't need to. Late May on a quiet evening, I sat on my porch in the rocking chair. The guitar rested across my lap. I wasn't playing, just listening to the ocean, feeling the cool breeze, watching the stars come out one by one. I thought about Dorothy, about Preston and Natasha, about Sophia and that postcard she kept on her wall. And I thought about myself. For 50 years, I'd believed peace meant being close to the people you loved, sacrificing for them, staying even when it hurt. But sitting there alone on that porch with the waves rolling in and the guitar in my hands, I realized something different. Sometimes peace isn't being next to someone. Sometimes peace is simply being. I strummed a chord softly, letting it hang in the air. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anything. I was already here. August came hot and humid, the air thick with salt and the sound of cicadas. 6 months since I'd left Youngstown. 6 months since I'd chosen myself. I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sun sink low and golden over the water, and took stock of where I was. My blood pressure had stabilized. The doctor said I could cut back on one of my medications. I slept through the night, now no pills, no waking at 3 a.m., with my heart pounding. My skin was tanned. My hands were steady. I felt lighter in every possible way. I called Vernon like I did most weeks. "You sound different, Herb," he said. "Your voice, it's easier." I smiled. "I feel easier, Vernon. I really do." There was a pause. "Preston and Natasha still ask about you. Not as much as they used to, but they ask. Are they okay? They're learning to live without depending on someone else to fix things. Maybe that's good for them. Maybe it is." I didn't feel bitter anymore, just calm. Like a door I'd been pushing against for 50 years had finally closed, and I could stop bracing myself. That night was Friday, open mic at Coastal Brews. I played a new song, one I'd written myself, Brunswick Morning. It was about the waves, about Dorothy, about Sophia, about freedom and second chances, and starting over when you thought it was too late. When I finished, the whole room stood up. A standing ovation, real and warm and unforced. Amber hugged me. "That's the best thing you've ever played, Herbert." A little girl, maybe 8 years old, not Sophia but close, came up to me shyly. "Mister, will you teach me to play guitar?" I smiled. "I'd be honored." Chester drove me home. We didn't talk much. At one point he glanced over. "You find what you were looking for?" "Herb." I looked out at the dark road, the stars overhead. "I found myself Chester. That's enough." He nodded. "Yeah, that's more than enough." When I got home, it was just past 10. I made a cup of tea, sat on the porch, and opened my laptop. I'd been thinking about this for weeks, maybe months. I opened my email and started typing. "Dear Sophia, I kept my promise. I'm by the ocean now. Every morning I wake up and see the waves. Every night I hear them sing me to sleep. Someday when you're older, if you want to come find me. Brunswick, Georgia, Hopkins Inn. They'll know where I am. We'll build those sandcastles together. I love you so much. Don't ever forget that. Love, Grandpa Herbert." I read it twice. Then I hit send. I closed the laptop and set it aside. For a long time I just sat there listening to the waves roll in. The air was warm. The stars were out. Somewhere down the beach someone was laughing. I thought about Dorothy, about the life we'd built together, the love we'd shared, the way she would have smiled if she could see me now. I thought about Preston and Natasha, about how hard I'd tried to be enough for them and how I never could be. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because they were looking for something I couldn't give. I thought about Sophia and the drawings she'd made of the two of us by the ocean, about the postcard she kept taped to her wall. And I thought about myself, 72 years old, sitting on a porch in a town I'd never heard of 6 months ago, playing guitar again, sleeping through the night, breathing easy. I picked up my guitar and played softly, nothing in particular, just chords that felt right. The music drifted out over the water, mixing with the sound of the waves. For 50 years, I thought peace meant sacrifice, staying, giving until there was nothing left. But I was wrong. Peace wasn't something you earned by suffering. Peace was something you found when you finally stopped running from yourself. I set the guitar down and closed my eyes, letting the ocean's sounds wash over me. This is it, I thought. This is what it feels like to be free. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anything else. I was already home. Looking back at my journey, I realize I wasted 50 years being a human ATM instead of being a father and grandfather in the truest sense. Don't be like me. Don't wait until you're 72 years old to finally choose yourself. I once mistook unconditional sacrifice for virtue, but in reality, I was simply teaching my children how to be selfish. Thank God for giving me the courage to change course when my hair had already turned white. The painful lesson I want to share through these grandpa stories is this: love does not mean allowing others to erode your self-respect. If you do not value yourself, no one else will. This is a true story of rebirth, a testament that it is never too late to find freedom. I pray that God enlightens those who are currently trapped in toxic sacrifices, just as I once was. Listen to these grandpa stories to realize that sometimes saying no is the greatest kindness you can show your children. God does not want us to live like ghosts in our own homes. Every mile I traveled from Youngstown to Brunswick added a new line to this hopeful true story. I hope my grandpa stories inspire you to pick up the guitar of your own life again. Remember, your life is a true story worth telling. Don't let anyone else write the ending for you. If my story touched your heart, please leave a comment to share your thoughts. Share this post and subscribe to the channel for more Tintahay content.